Welcome to Elevate English. Elevate your English. Elevate your life. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe to the Elevate English channel. Let's start our story. The Winds of Change. Sophie Bennett had always been a creature of habit. Her life was a carefully constructed routine. Wake up at 6:30 a.m., walk to the cafe for her morning coffee, head to the small bookstore she worked at, and then spend her evenings curled up with a good book or in front of a screen watching her favorite shows. It was simple, predictable, and comforting. And, at 29, Sophie couldn't imagine a life any other way. The bookstore, the paper crane, had been her sanctuary for years. She loved the smell of old paper, the comforting silence, and the way the shelves were packed with stories waiting to be discovered. She knew the regular customers by name, and even the new faces were quickly welcomed. Her co-workers, a quirky but kind group of individuals, had become like family. She never felt lonely in the bookstore, even though her social life outside the shop was limited to the occasional dinner with her parents or coffee with a friend. But life, Sophie learned, had a funny way of throwing unexpected curveballs when you least expected them. It happened one windy afternoon in early spring. The air was crisp, the sky overcast with dark clouds, and Sophie was sorting through the latest delivery of books when the door to the shop opened with a loud chime. She glanced up to see a man standing in the doorway, his dark hair tousled by the wind and his eyes scanning the rows of books. He wasn't a regular customer, and Sophie couldn't help but notice the intensity in his gaze. He was tall, dressed casually but with a style that suggested an effortless charm. His clothes were slightly weathered, as though he had been traveling for some time, and he carried a worn leather satchel slung over his shoulder. Sophie couldn't help but feel a small flutter in her chest as he walked into the shop. "Can I help you?" Sophie asked, offering a polite smile. The man turned toward her, his eyes meeting hers for a brief moment before he glanced at the shelves. "I'm looking for something," he said in a voice that was deep and rich, with an accent Sophie couldn't place. "What kind of book are you looking for?" Sophie asked, a hint of curiosity in her tone. He didn't seem like the type to just browse randomly. He hesitated before answering, his gaze lingering on the shelves. "I'm not sure. Something that will help me understand my own story." Sophie raised an eyebrow but didn't question him further. Instead, she walked over to a section of novels and began pulling out a few options, wondering why he seemed so distant, like he was searching for something more than just a book. "Maybe something philosophical?" Sophie suggested as she handed him a few titles. "Or something more poetic? I think you might find these interesting." The man took the books from her hands, his fingers brushing against hers for a fleeting moment. Sophie felt a small shiver run through her, and when he looked up at her with a faint smile, she couldn't help but feel that strange sense of familiarity she couldn't quite place. "I'll take these," he said quietly, his voice almost hesitant. Sophie nodded and led him to the counter, where she rang up the books. As she did so, the man seemed distracted, his eyes scanning the titles on the shelves as if they were all pieces of some puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Sophie felt a pang of curiosity. Who was he? Why did he seem so lost? When the transaction was complete, the man smiled again, this time a little warmer. "Thank you," he said softly. "I'll come back tomorrow." And with that, he left, the door chiming again as he disappeared into the rainy afternoon. The encounter left Sophie with a sense of lingering curiosity, something she couldn't shake for the rest of the day. She had no reason to dwell on it. After all, he was just another customer, but something about him felt different, almost magnetic. The next day, to Sophie's surprise, the man returned, just as he had promised. This time, he came in with a slightly different demeanor. He looked less distracted and more focused, though there was still a shadow in his eyes. "Back for more?" Sophie asked with a playful smile, her curiosity getting the better of her. He returned the smile, though it was subtle. "Yes, I need more," he said quietly, his voice lower than it had been the day before. As they began to talk about the books he had taken the day before, Sophie learned that his name was Leo, and that he had been traveling for several years, moving from place to place, searching for something that he wasn't quite able to articulate. He had spent the last few months in town, taking odd jobs here and there, and it seemed as though he was slowly trying to piece together the fragments of his life. Sophie couldn't help but be fascinated by his story, by the mystery that seemed to follow him. She found herself spending more and more time talking to Leo, drawn to the depth of his thoughts, to the vulnerability he tried so hard to mask. Every conversation they had revealed something new, something intriguing. As the days turned into weeks, their interactions became more frequent. Leo would come in almost every day, sometimes just to talk, other times to borrow more books. They would sit together in the corner of the shop, sipping coffee and discussing everything from philosophy to art to the meaning of life. Sophie began to look forward to his visits, and soon, she realized that she had begun to look forward to him, his presence, his voice, the way he made her feel like she was the only person who mattered when they spoke. One evening, after the shop had closed for the day, Leo asked Sophie to join him for a walk. It was a crisp, cool evening, and the streets of the small town were bathed in the soft glow of street lamps. The wind had picked up, carrying with it the scent of fresh rain. "Do you ever wonder if we're meant to cross paths with people for a reason?" Leo asked as they walked side by side. He was gazing ahead, his expression thoughtful. Sophie glanced at him, her heart skipping a beat. "I think I do now," she said quietly. "I don't know why, but I feel like something's changed since we started talking." Leo stopped walking and turned to face her. His eyes were intense, his gaze locked on hers. "I think it's changed for me, too," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Sophie felt a flutter of nervousness in her chest, but there was also a sense of peace, as if this moment was meant to happen. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice soft. Leo stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. I think I've been searching for something outside of myself for so long that I forgot to look within. But when I'm with you, Sophie, I don't feel lost anymore." The words hit Sophie like a wave. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to process the intensity of what Leo was telling her. But before she could respond, Leo took her hand gently in his. "I don't know where this will go," Leo continued. "But I know that I don't want to keep running from something I might have found." Sophie stood there, staring at him, her heart racing. The world around them seemed to fall away, leaving only the two of them, standing in the quiet night, their hands intertwined. "I don't know either," Sophie whispered, "but I think I'd like to find out." And just like that, the winds of change shifted, and their story began. A story of two people who had been searching for something, maybe for years, maybe their whole lives, and had found it in each other. Let me know if you'd like further modifications or more.